Welcome. You're listening to Ask the Doulas, a podcast where we talk to experts from all over the country about topics related to pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and early parenting. Let's chat.
Hello. This is Kristin with Ask the Doulas, and I am thrilled to chat with my friend Lizzie Williams. Lizzie has a background in marketing and communications and lives in Grand Rapids with her husband, 2 teenage stepsons, and their 2-year-old daughter. Lizzie was a student in Becoming a Mother course and also utilized our postpartum doula services. Hey, Lizzie.
Hey, Kristin.
I'm so excited to chat with you. You have been such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to spreading the word about support options. And you were recently featured in a local magazine with tips on supporting parents and friends, and had so much helpful advice that I asked you to hop on Ask the Doulas.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. I've been they say long-time listener, first-time caller.
I love it. Thanks for listening.
Of course.
So what are some of your tips? I know in both the Becoming a Mother course and just sharing in our group, and also in your article and in the contribution to our upcoming book, Supported, you had talked a lot about before you had kids, you didn't really know how to support friends who were expecting or new parents.
Yeah, totally. I felt like when I had my daughter, Betty, it was like people came out of the woodwork with support and love and were like pouring into me and my husband and our kids in like ways that I was just like blown away by. And I'm like, how do you guys know how to do this? Like, how did you know that I would need that thing, or that like this other little moment would mean so much to me? And so I was talking actually with a coworker about it at the time who didn't have kids herself. And she was like, can you just like give me some info on like how, now that you know, like how people can show up for you, can you share that with others so that the rest of us can like be better friends and better family members? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to take some notes. So I've actually been thinking about this for almost 2 years because of my friend Andrea kind of asking those questions. So I did take some notes and tried to like really pay attention to the things that people did for us that were really helpful, and just like made that transition into being a parent of a newborn a little bit easier. Of course, my Becoming course crew was also, I would say, like a critical little group of people. I was thinking about it last night because my daughter's having some like sleep regression as a toddler, and I was in her bedroom and it was 1 a.m. and I was having flashbacks to like late night feedings where sometimes you're just scrolling your phone. And I would post sometimes we had a private social media channel for just the students that were in your Becoming course. And I would post on there like, does anybody know anything about this? Whatever it was. Almost inevitably, somebody by 8 a.m., by like the morning, would have responded to me like, reaching out, here's a couple things I've thought about. So I guess I would just say like my first note is like finding a community and being a community. So it's like whether you've had kids already or not, like new parents need community and need the classic village to support them and love them. And as a new parent, you also need to like accept that.
Absolutely. And whether it's a new parent support group or breastfeeding group or something virtual like the Becoming a Mother course, people who are going through the same thing at the same time is so important, because again,
totally.
Like whether it's teething or sleep regressions,
yes,
or baby proofing your house, things that come up. And I know with my kids being preteens, like so much has changed since I was in the early parenting phase that
yes.
My advice, if I wasn't a doula and working with newborns and pregnant individuals, I wouldn't have that ability to give good advice.
Oh my gosh. Yes. My husband has 2 older kids. So I have teenagers that I live with, as you mentioned. So 17, or now 18 as of earlier this week, and 14. And so I would say to him, I'd say, Steve, like what's going on here? What is this thing that this baby's doing? Or like, what do we need to know? And he's like, I can't even remember, like, because both it had been a while and it's such a blur when you're in it, and
Yes.
things change, recommendations change, and so he was like, "Oh, I have to relearn all this stuff, like, right along with you."
Absolutely. I mean, things from safe sleep to just
Yes,
feeding options, bottles are so different, pumps are so different. It's all,
yes,
yeah, it changes constantly. And technology being involved in parenting, whether it's like the monitors and things that are
right.
just beyond what I had as a new parent.
Yes. I guess within that, like, vein is, like, helping people if they don't have that network of other whether it's moms or dads or support people, like, helping them find that can be really critical. So, recently, I started a little new moms group for people specifically that are new to West Michigan, which is where I live, and it was mostly because it's like, if you're new to the area and you also don't have anyone in your life that's got a baby, it can be super isolating. So that was like a space that I knew I could help a few people find connection in. And, I love seeing like the texts like, okay, can somebody help me with this one thing? And it is like walking along the path with people that are at the same stage as you can be hugely impactful.
Exactly. That is so beautiful. And especially if they don't have friends or family nearby. And we have so many
Yeah.
people moving to West Michigan for work. And, no
Hmm.
matter where you are in the country, it's just people are moving more than ever. But I also find that many clients had lived in other cities and states and then end up moving back before their baby's born to get that
Right.
support from family. So it
Yes.
goes kind of both ways, either moving here for work or moving back and not
Yep.
having friends or that support network other than the grandparents.
Totally. And even that regard, like my mom was so sweet. My mom lives in the area and I was again thinking about it in prep for this podcast, but it's like I think my mom called me every single day for the first 4 months that my daughter
Um,
was here. And it was such a gift to like have just like knowing that she was going to call and knowing that I was going to have somebody to be able to talk to. But even that, like again, she wasn't the person I was going to for specifics. She was just like showing me love. And it's like you need both. Like I needed to
exactly.
just like know that I was loved and cared for and could tell somebody a stupid story, but then I also needed other mom friends who I could say kind of those more specific questions that are like the people that are in the weeds with you. You're like, I'm 6.5 weeks. What am I looking to like, what's my baby gonna do tomorrow? And these other parents kind of show up and say, okay, I'm at 7.5 weeks and here's what I'm seeing. And it's
Right.
like you kind of need both, like people in the trenches with you and then people just loving on you, checking on you, asking how you're doing. It's definitely a combo, I would say.
Absolutely. And yeah, we have a grandparents class just for that reason to try to get
Oh,
grandparents who want to help up to
yeah.
speed on everything from car seats to childproofing their home. If, many
Yeah.
grandparents are now caregivers when maternity and paternity leave ends just because we're in a childcare crisis right now. So it's
Yeah.
almost forced on grandparents and they don't know all of changes in feeding and
Mhm.
sleep and so yeah, that's been utilized more recently than even when we started Gold Coast and introduced it.
That's a great idea. I didn't know that you did that, but I can totally imagine how it helps sort of neutralize some of those conversations as well, instead of like as a mom or dad that you're like asking your parents to do something differently than how they did it, having a neutral party like Gold Coast coming in and kind of just providing up to date information would be super helpful.
Right. Because those conversations can be awkward. So,
Definitely. Yeah.
so what are your tips
Yeah.
for friends who maybe haven't had kids to support their friends and family members who are going through a major life change, whether it's baby number one or, baby number three, there's
Yeah.
still a lot of care that's needed in this isolating time.
Totally. I think for me, and maybe this is because I'm like not someone that loves to cook and like cooking always feels kind of like a chore at our house between my husband and I, but like the meal train was an absolute gift. So we had I think my sister was the one who had set it up, but we had people dropping off meals probably 3 times a week for the first couple months, and it was amazing. And some days, I was feeling like I wanted to hide and I was like not prepared to see anyone. And I remember one of my friends dropped off something on the porch, and I literally like she almost saw me and I like crawled into my office so she wouldn't see me because I was just like, I do not have the energy to talk. And like,
Right.
I was like, I can't do this right now. And then other days when somebody would be dropping something off, I would have like a jolt of energy or I just want to talk. And so the meal train was like obviously both like nourishing for our bodies and it like took something huge off our plate, which was like meal prep, but it also like allowed an opportunity to either see people if you wanted to. And like even just a couple minute conversation when you're in the trenches can be a real kind of like lifesaver at times. And it can give you kind of a perspective shift if you're feeling a little off, which you do feel off.
You do, absolutely. And to have
Yeah.
adult company, even for a few minutes, can
Yeah.
make a big difference. And the days can be really long when
Totally.
partners are going back to work and you're in
Yeah.
an empty house and with this baby
Yeah.
and exhausted and feeling like you're constantly feeding, no matter how you feed, there's still that
Exactly.
feeling like it never ends.
Yes. So I would say like that was my number one biggest thing, like help with
Yeah.
some meals. And like there is like it's like an online website or whatever called Meal Train where people can actually put in like if you've got dietary restrictions or like how many kids are in the home, like you can kind of customize to what your own family's needs are, which can be really helpful because then it doesn't leave people like wondering, oh, well, I don't know if she eats dairy, it just like allows you to put all that information out there and then your friends are able to like support you in a way that feels good to you. That was great. And it was funny, met a friend recently who moved from Chicago and she had her third baby and we set up a meal train for her and she was like, "What is this? This is amazing. I've never felt so cared for." And I'm like, "Yeah, like you need it not just for the first kid, you need it for any kid or even major surgery." It's like just such a good way to like support people with whatever kind of challenge they're going through in life because it just takes such a big burden off their plate.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's so much more attention spent on the first baby,
Yeah.
but you can often need that support more when you have other
Mhm.
kids at home. Like you even mentioned the teenagers that need to eat
Yeah,
all of the time. And
exactly.
like it's
That's
so important.
yes. So that's I would say like my number one is like help nourish people because like your body, if especially if somebody's breastfeeding, body's just going through a lot. Another thing that a couple of my girlfriends did that, again, I just was not aware of was like they made little like lactation cookies or even these little like lactation muffin bites that were just like packed with kind of like veggies and healthy grains and low on sugar. And they were just like for those late nights when you just like need a nibble. Because for me, again, having never done this before, it was like I was not prepared for how often I was finding myself hungry as somebody that
Yes,
was breastfeeding. I was like, oh, I need a lot of snacks.
absolutely. And to keep up the supply, it requires a lot of hydration. Sometimes
Yes.
the extras, like you mentioned, the teas and cookies can make a big
Yes.
difference. Yes.
And even like a delicious drink was so thoughtful and so nice. Like one of my girlfriends she works around my house and she would like drop off a little coffee for me. And it was like,
So
it's just
sweet.
such a little thing, but it was so thoughtful. Or like a little kombucha or, just like something to serve as a little delight in your day can feel so profound in these moments when you're just really beat, really tired, and really, overwhelmed. Those little moments of kind of love that people have the opportunity to show you are both easy for them and like very meaningful for you.
Yes. And food is such an act of service and love, whether you make it yourself for someone or you utilize a catering or delivery
Totally.
service.
Yes.
I know for
Yeah.
friends of mine out of town, like I will utilize a service. And
Hmm.
friend had twins, and I had food delivered for she and her husband after that first night.
Yeah. Totally. Like the same for me. One of my girlfriends after I had my daughter, she had a little boy and she lives in a different state. And so I'm like, oh man, like I wish I could help her in this way that others have been helping me. But I just ended up sending her a DoorDash gift card, and I could just text it to her and it's like maybe it's not as amazing, but if it made her life just a little bit easier, then it's worth it.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, Alyssa here. I'm just popping in to tell you about our course called Becoming. Becoming a Mother is your guide to a confident pregnancy and birth, all in a convenient 6-week online program. From birth plans to sleep training and everything in between, you'll gain the confidence and skills you need for a smooth transition to motherhood. You'll get live coaching calls with Kristin and myself, a bunch of expert videos, including chiropractic care, pelvic floor physical therapy, mental health experts, breastfeeding, and much more. You'll also get a private Facebook community with other mothers going through this at the same time as you to offer support and encouragement when you need it most. And then, of course, you'll also have direct email access to me and Kristin, in addition to the live coaching calls. If you'd like to learn more about the course, you can email us at info@goldcoastdoulas.com or check it out at thebecomingcourse.com. We'd love to see you there.
So, Lizzie, outside of gift cards and meals, what are your other tips for supporting new parents?
Yeah, I think inviting them on a walk can be like a really nice way to both help them kind of get outside, get some fresh air, and also just sort of meet them where they are. That was something helpful for me at least because it meant that they were coming to me so I didn't have to like load the baby up in the car seat and sort of go somewhere. And it could be as simple as just walking down your street, or you could go for a longer cruise. And for me, when I would go with some of my friends that were already parents, it was an opportunity for me to just like pepper them with questions basically and
Yes.
say, what about this? What about this? What about this? And that was very helpful. It was just like dedicated time together, but I felt like I wasn't having to step away from my baby to get it, if that makes sense.
It does, yes. So it's hard to find a sitter. You often don't want to leave your baby as an early
Yeah.
parent. And so it's nice to have that community and also be able to, get some vitamin D and
Yes.
do some light exercise. It's so important.
Yes. Yeah,
Great.
so that was a really helpful one for me, and then even, like, having sometimes one of my friends would offer to run an errand with me, which was, again, like, so helpful, and, like, if you're just popping into a couple little places, like, for me, there's a bakery nearby that I love to go to, and it's like, cool, if she could just hop in the car with me, again, so I don't have to be, like, unloading the car seat and putting it back in because that is heavy, like,
It
much heavier
is.
much heavier than I anticipated.
And you're not supposed to be lifting after delivery. So it's like
Yes.
you want to avoid some of that. And to have a friend in
Yes.
the car to help is huge, or a
Right.
doula.
Exactly. So, just, like, those little things, again, that's I would say that's for, like, your super close, kind of besties that you're like, "Get in the car, we're running errands," you know?
Yes.
But that can be anyone. And I also actually found that specifically for my friends who didn't have kids yet, one thing that was really nice is like they could come over after my daughter was asleep. And that was such a gift because my other like my sister, for example, who also has it had a young like she had an 18-month-old when my daughter was born. It's like we really couldn't see each other in the evenings because we were both kind of doing nighttime routines. Whereas my brother and his girlfriend, now his wife, but like they could pop over and come over at 8 o'clock. They could bring some, snacks, or we could play a game and kind of feel like back to normal a little bit because they had the flexibility around time. So, like, it was so nice having kind of a blend of both friends who didn't have kids and friends who did have kids so that you can kind of balance out your world a little bit.
Yeah, it is helpful to have a family at a similar stage. I have a lot of siblings, and
Mhm.
I was pregnant at the same time as two of my sister-in-laws. So
Oh my
going
gosh.
through all of those life stages at the same time was very helpful, and dealing with holidays and
Yes.
family meals and so on. It made it
Yep.
so much easier to have family with babies a similar age.
Definitely. Yeah. So a couple other things that kind of came to my mind. One is like so simple, but I know I really noticed it when I went back to work is when people asked about my daughter by her name, it just like, I don't know, it just like kind of shifted something in my heart, I guess, where I'd be like,
Oh,
oh, this person like they really care about me. They're really listening and they're really paying attention and they're not just asking about like, "Oh, how's the baby?" Like
right.
they're saying like, "How's Betty?" Like, "I'm listening. I care about you." And just hearing that when you're on like a work call or in a, boardroom or whatever, it can just like soften your whole kind of approach in a way that I felt was like really meaningful to me. So that's just a simple one that I think that anybody could kind of like take note of, I guess.
So,
Yeah.
what are your other tips? I know you
Yeah.
have many.
I know. I'm like, I've got so many different ways of thinking about things, but I think a couple things that again were like just didn't think about how nice they would be, but I did not expect how much clothes you would go through at the like early stages. So like my aunt, every time I felt like my aunt would come over, she would just like kind of casually like leave behind a little PJs set or whatever. And I'm like, oh, why does she keep leaving these PJs? I mean, they're cute. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's because we're going through a bazillion onesies. Like
Yes.
when they're so little, and I'm like, oh, because these are very helpful to have more of. So I would say like even just like leaving something little if you are stopping by was so sweet. The board books, again, I kind of thought like, okay, these are going to be just for the little babies, but like my daughter's 2 and she still like loves looking through board books. Like they last a while, and so anytime you can kind of think about something that's related to maybe you and your friend or your family member that would make that board book a little special for the baby and for the parent. So, like, for example, I worked in technology, and so we would send out to all of our employees that had babies, we would send a little book about like little baby technologists, and like
Oh,
first words in tech. And it's like something related to that where it's like even now I don't work there anymore, but like when I read that book to my daughter, it's like I still have fond memories of my colleagues who sent that to me. So like put in a little tiny little extra mental energy and try to think about something that relates to you or your relationship to your friend or family member, coworker, whoever it is that added that little baby to their lives.
that's
Um,
so thoughtful. And it is great when employers are able to put together care packages that,
mhm.
again, sort of tie into the work that you do, but also, value you as a parent and want to support you in that journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is so nice. And another one of my other coworkers, like she actually went online and found my baby registry. So like I didn't send it to her, she just like searched um and found it. And then when my daughter was born, she like shipped some items that hadn't been purchased and they showed up
Oh,
at my house. And again, it was like so sweet, so thoughtful. Didn't take that much effort from her. It just took a little bit of intentionality. And it really was just such a sweet surprise from her. So that was another good one. Um, and then care packages that also focus on the parents or the other kids in the home, if there are
yes.
other kids in the home, can be so sweet. And like again, just reminding them that like they are human and like any little treats for them can be really nice. Like some cozy new slippers or like a blanket or my sister-in-law got me a little basket and it had like just some like lotions and lip gloss and things like that that were not things that I had ever bought myself recently. And so it was just a little treat, you know?
That is so thoughtful. Yes, and I agree because sometimes after delivering, it becomes all about the baby, or if there are
Hmm.
multiple babies, and the mother and the other parent often feel neglected. It's like, well, I went through
Yeah.
this, and what about me? So the fact that, friends or employers are also focusing on the parent as well as gifts for baby.
Yes, exactly. And like in that vein, like another thing that's can be so nice for the parents that is um, taking a few pictures. Like if you are over and visiting and you're holding the baby, or to just like snap a few pictures of them. And like I mentioned this in my article, but it's like in the moment they might text you those photos and you might be like, what? Why? Why did you take that picture? Because you like are exhausted and you got bags under your eyes and you're wearing pajamas that you've been wearing for 3 days, like I get
Right.
it. But like long term, it's just like that was you in the moment, and that is like this special time that I think you can look back on later and be really grateful for those little kind of candid moments that some of your friends snap. So again,
Absolutely.
that's such a simple little thing, but it can be so sweet.
Yeah.
There's just so
Really,
many
it's
little
all about
ways.
the thought. Just showing
Yeah,
that you care seems to be your major theme.
I think that is it, and trying to anticipate things that the parents might not be able to anticipate themselves right now. Another big thing, which again, the doula support also helped me out with this, was just like helping around the house with little things, So like when my postpartum doula would come over and I would be breastfeeding, like that was a thing that I kinda had to do on my own, and so while I was doing that, she would say, "Hey, what can I do around here?" And of course, like, for so many of us, the answer is like, "Oh, nothing, nothing, it's fine, I'm fine,"
Right.
and
It
then
can be hard to ask for help, but that's what
it's
we're there
super
for.
hard. Yes, and so one of the suggestions that she gave me was like, "Why don't you write down a couple things before I come? And that way you've already thought about it and it's written down, and then I can just come over and just start doing those things." And so I had gotten like a hand-me-down stroller, and it had lived in like somebody's garage for a while.
Okay.
So, it had some cobwebs and things like that. And so that was like on my little list of things that I was going to try to tackle, or we were going to try to tackle over the next like week or so. And she was like, I've got this, I can do it. And so she just kind of like helped me out and started dusting it off. And by the time I was done breastfeeding, it's like even just that little amount of effort that she put made the stroller like 1,000 times better looking and like ready to go. And so it was just like she could help me tackle these little tasks that there's just so many of them. There's so many little tasks when you're operating kind of minute by minute. And so, being able to ask your friends or family, or again, people that you are letting into your home, like let them do a couple of things for you. Let them load the dishwasher. Let them throw something in the washing machine, or fold something that's in the dryer. Like just let them do it. I guess that would be a note for the parents themselves, but as the caregivers and the people that are showing love and support, like just be ready to kind of jump up and start doing, and let them kind of guide you on what they're comfortable with.
Yeah. And depending on the parent's personality, a list might be easier. There are some of
Mhm.
those printable checklists that you can put on your fridge
Oh,
if family or friends come in after a new
oh,
baby, of just, again, unloading the dishwasher,
yeah,
just some simple things that can make a big difference. Straightening up the
yep,
living room. Yeah, picking up toys if there are other like small kids at home.
yeah. Or like something that was so like I had never known about was like sterilizing a lot of stuff. Like so you got to like
Yes, so
sterilize
much
your
to sterilize.
bottles and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, the last thing you really want to do when you have a teeny tiny baby is like boil water and like sterilize stuff in boiling water, right? So like again, that was another thing that like if my mom was over or if our doula was there, I'd be like, "Do you mind?" And they never minded, because it was a pretty simple task for them to do. But when you're holding a little baby, it's not as simple. It's just trickier.
It is tricky, yes. And those dropped pacifiers, and yeah, there's just so much, all the pump parts, constant
Yes. Oh my
sterilizing.
gosh. Yes. I'm like having PTSD flashback around pumping right now.
Yes.
But
And I know you mentioned the baby registry earlier
mhm.
and your colleague finding it, but
Yeah.
you put a lot of intention into your registry, and also like when you were in the becoming course,
Mhm.
you had asked a lot of questions and really focused on, sustainable and reused items
Mhm.
for your personal registry and not wanting to be wasteful. So
Yeah.
we had you add a section about creating the registry to our supported book because it
Yeah.
was so thoughtful and helpful. And so if you would like to elaborate just a bit on that,
Sure.
I would love for our listeners to hear some of your tips.
Yeah, I mean, I felt my friends and family were, putting together a shower and they're like, "What's on your registry?" And I'm like, "Wait, shouldn't shouldn't you guys be telling me what's on my registry? Like, y'all have done this and I don't know what I'm doing yet." And so I did find myself like doing a lot of research and of course reaching out to some of my good friends who had had babies. I reached out to you and Alyssa, who, were so thoughtful to like give me some additional tips. I remember Alyssa being like, "I don't think you need like 9 swaddles, Lizzie."
No.
And I'm like, okay, okay, I don't know. I'm just like basing this off the internet. So having a lot of like good feedback. But really for me, as you mentioned, like I wanted to keep sustainability in mind for just and the amount of stuff that we were kind of bringing into our house. And so I
Yes.
think like my big thing with creating a registry was like to give yourself time at the front end to like think about your values, which I think is an important thing to do when you're making a lot of different decisions. But your registry is an opportunity to say, okay, how much stuff do I need? And if I'm going to be getting this, then what values lens am I looking at this through? So do I want to be getting everything on Amazon? Some people, that's easy, it's convenient, and they have great return policies. So, like, that's in line with what their priorities are. Um, for me, I wanted to be trying to get more from local businesses where I could, because that's something that's important to me, or finding used secondhand, or even actual like sustainably built products. So,
Yes.
there's kind of different layers to that, of course, is like where you get it, how you get it, and then what is it made of. Um,
Right. So a blend of supporting local and having
mhm.
eco-friendly, whether it's a toy or any products.
Yeah,
And I know you are trying to avoid plastics and just waste
right.
that even comes with packaging sometimes.
Exactly. So I think, giving yourself time to think through those things is helpful. The other one that I didn't really know a whole lot about at the time was sort of um, like the actual mechanics of some of the toys and things like that, So, some of my friends had said, like, "Oh, you're going to love this baby jumper that kind of hooks up to your door frame," and then as I learned a bit more about kind of like the Montessori approach, I was like then less interested in kind of like container based toys.
Right.
So, even like learning about actual like child development, it's like, okay, well, I don't think we do need that. It's fine that other people use that, but it's just probably not going to be something that we need. But it
Exactly.
was it was funny, like even for my baby shower, for example, I had said, "Hey, I'm gonna like put these things on the registry so that you know what I'm thinking. But like if you have this and you want to like regift it or, pass it along, like that's great. We don't need new items, but these are just kind of like some of the things that we're looking for in general." And we also said no packaging. And like some people, for some, you've got that like, great aunt who's like can't comprehend that you wouldn't wouldn't want something wrapped with like an amazing, beautiful bow. But amazingly, my friends and family all followed the directions. So like
Woo!
even
That's
yeah, like
awesome.
simple things like that. Like, okay, I don't need 1,000 different like baby bags, and I don't need to waste even just trash in the packaging elements of sort of the festivities around having a baby.
Right. And then you just have to deal with all that waste when the shower's over and so much more to
Exactly.
clean up. And oh,
Yes.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So, what other tips do you have for new parents to really plan to get the support that they need and, you know, build their registry and
Mhm.
communicate their needs to friends and family?
Yeah, I think, again, like, start with sort of giving yourself space to think about, like, what does this look like for me? And how, one of my good friends said, "How you begin is how you go." And, that might be, like, a real quote by somebody famous and, but I don't know. That's just, like, what she said to me, and I thought it was, like, an interesting thing to think about. So it's like, as I was setting up kind of spaces for Betty and, thinking about what we needed, it was like, "Okay, what kind of parent do I wanna be, and what kind of kid do I want her to be?" And so I wanted her to be a kid that could, like, make a rocket ship out of blocks, and I wanted her to be a kid that helped, whip up some muffins in the kitchen with me. Like, I don't know, I
Yeah, hands
wanted her to,
on.
yeah, hands-on, creative, problem solving, comfortable outdoors. And so I think just like giving yourself space to think about, like, who do you see this kid becoming, and then how do you set up your systems and support to allow for that. So even something, this is maybe sound like a random example, but like, I wanted Betty to know that I had friends, right? Like, I wanted her to know that, like, my life, she was a critical part of my life, but, like, that so were my friends, and so were, these other pieces of me. And so even when it was really hard at times for me to leave her, I would try to say the things out loud that were, like, showing that value. So even like those early, months, I would say more so than weeks, when I would go to meet up with a couple of girlfriends or something like that, I would say like, "Hey, it's hard. It's really hard for me to leave you right now too, because like I love spending time with you and I love you so much. But it's also really important for mom to go see her friends because they're really important to me too." And so just like really being thoughtful of the behavior that you're modeling for them is to me kind of like the crux of it all, and allowing your child to like see your community and to see people show up for you. I think it might not, like, they're not going to remember that from being 3 days old or 9 days old or 13 days old, but like, it's part of you then, and you then show up for others in the way that people showed up for you.
Yes,
So it's just
I
all
love
about
it.
kind of like living with intention, I suppose.
It is 100%. So you have shared your wisdom in blogs and social posts, of course, in the supported book.
Yeah.
And I didn't know until today, but you also created this lovely community for new moms.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners connect with you other than reading about your registry tips and your own personal experience with pumping in the book? So yeah,
Yes. It's funny. It's like I never anticipated that I would be maybe like so communicative about parenting when it seems like in some ways to be such a common thing, but when you're in it, it just like overtakes your life. And
it
for me,
does.
it's been like a very positive, in a positive way. And um, so I have really enjoyed kind of like thinking about it and writing about it and reflecting on it. And so I do that sometimes online, but I don't have like a specific place for people to follow me other than, I'm on social media, of course, on Instagram or LinkedIn, so people are welcome to connect with me on there. But um, yeah, it just opened my heart up in a way that kind of surprised me, and so I wanted to acknowledge it and share it in ways that could be helpful for others, I suppose.
Well, thank you so much, Lizzie. I appreciate your time and all of the intention and support you offer new parents, but especially new mothers.
Yeah, and thank you, Kristen. Obviously, like I had never even heard of like doula support before knowing you and Alyssa, and so it was such a gift for me to both go through that becoming course, which was hugely important for me, and then also all the support that you've shown like following that. So I do really want to say thank you to you and to the whole Gold Coast team for being kind of so the way that you honor mothers and fathers, but really allow us to kind of like flourish has been very helpful for me. So I appreciate you inviting me onto this podcast to just kind of chat about my experiences.
It was fun. Thank you so much
Yeah,
and appreciate all the kind words.
for sure.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Ask the Doulas. For more information about Gold Coast Doulas, visit us on our website, goldcoastdoulas.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Thank you. Remember, these moments are golden.